I just found out my wife, whom I thought I knew, stole $200, $0 from our joint account to fund her affair with her boss. And now she's claiming our house, worth $850, $0, is legally hers because she secretly signed a deed of trust while I was abroad, and the lawyer she hired is refusing to release the documents. How do I fight this betrayal? I never thought I'd be the guy sitting here, writing about how I found out my wife of 10 years was cheating on me, stealing from us, and somehow trying to take everything I worked for. But here I am. The most unexpected moment hit me like a ton of bricks, walking into our bedroom and finding her phone open on the bed with a message from her boss, Mark, that read, "Can't wait to see you tonight. This time I'll make sure you forget your husband." That was the first real sign. I'd noticed she'd been acting weird lately, more secretive, avoiding my questions, staying out late, and suddenly her phone was glued to her hand. But I never thought she'd actually cheat, let alone steal $250,000 from our joint account to fund her affair. It started about 6 months ago. Our marriage was solid, or so I thought. We had a nice house in the suburbs, good jobs, hers as an executive at a marketing firm, mine as a project manager at a construction company. We had plans, dreams, a future. But slowly I noticed her phone buzzing constantly, and she'd get defensive if I asked who it was. She'd brush it off, say she was just talking to her sister or a client. I didn't want to be paranoid, so I let it go. Until I found the receipts on her laptop, hotel bookings, dinners, gifts, all paid for with our joint credit card. And the names on the receipts, Mark's, her boss. I saw the hotel name, the dates, and the amount, several $1,000s in charges over the last few months. I started digging deeper. I checked our bank account online, and that's when I saw it. Around $200, $0 missing from our savings. Just gone. I called the bank and they confirmed it was transferred to an account under her name. That's when I knew she stolen that money to fund her affair with Mark. I was furious, numb, and hurt all at once. How could she do this? How could she betray me like this after everything? I confronted her that night, and her reaction was a mix of anger, denial, and outright lies. She told me I was overreacting, that I didn't understand her, that I was paranoid. She called me insecure, accused me of spying on her. But I had proof. I had the bank statements, the hotel receipts, the messages. Still, she kept lying, insisting she loved me and it was all a mistake, that Mark was just a friend, that I was imagining things. The worst part, she told me she was pregnant, said it was Mark, and that I should just accept it. That was the moment I realized she was capable of anything. The lies, the manipulation, the betrayal, it all hit me like a freight train. I felt like I didn't even know my wife anymore. My mind was racing, trying to process everything. How could she do this? How could she lie so effortlessly? I was angry, yes, but also deeply sad. I still loved her, or at least I thought I did. But now I wasn't sure I could trust her again. The shock of discovering her affair and her theft was overwhelming. I didn't sleep that night, just stared at the ceiling, trying to figure out what to do next. I knew I had to act fast, but I wasn't prepared for what was coming. After that night, everything changed. I couldn't look at her the same way. The woman I married, the woman I trusted with everything, had turned into someone I barely recognized. I started going through everything, her phone, her emails, her social media accounts, trying to find any more clues. I needed to understand how deep this went, and what I found was even worse. There were messages between her and Mark, explicit conversations, plans for their secret meetings, even photos of them together. She had been cheating on me for months, and all the while she was lying to my face. But what really broke me was discovering the deed of trust she secretly signed while I was abroad on a business trip. I had been away for 3 weeks, working on a project out of town, and she had used that time to finalize her plans. The deed transferred the house, our house, worth about $850, $0, legally into her name. She claimed she had done it because she thought I was going to leave her and she wanted to secure her future. That was her story anyway. She insisted she never told me because she thought I'd get mad, or worse, take everything away from her. She had an answer for everything, but it was all bullshit. I knew she did it to protect herself, to make sure she could keep the house if I found out. When I confronted her about it, she spun some ridiculous story about how she was just doing what was best for us, that I was hardly around, and she felt insecure. She told me she was planning to tell me about the deed, but I was never supposed to find out the way I did. She said she was scared I'd leave her if I knew she'd signed it behind my back. The lawyer she hired, who I later found out was recommended by Mark, refused to give me any documents. My lawyer tried to get the paperwork, but she claimed it was under a confidentiality agreement. That's when I realized she arranged everything in advance, probably with Mark's help. I was furious. The entire house, our life, savings, everything we built, she was claiming it all now belonged to her. She was playing the victim, crying crocodile tears, saying she loved me, that she was sorry, that she was just scared and made a mistake. But I could see right through her lies. She was a master manipulator, and I was just her latest target. I felt betrayed, not just as a husband, but as a man who thought he knew his wife. That she could do something so calculated, so cold, to steal our house and money, and then lie about it, it's like I was living in a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. I started to question everything. How long had she been planning this? Was she really in love with Mark, or was that just a way for her to cover her tracks? She kept insisting she was done with Mark, that she never meant for it to get this far, but her actions told a different story. She had lied to my face so many times I couldn't tell what was real anymore. Every day, I felt more lost, more betrayed. I wanted to believe she still loved me, that she was sorry, but deep down I knew I couldn't trust her again. The emotional toll was unbearable. I felt angry, heartbroken, and humiliated. The woman I loved, the woman I thought I knew, had turned into a thief and a liar. The betrayal cut so deep I didn't know if I'd ever recover. I was furious at her, furious at myself for not seeing the signs, and furious at Mark for being a part of it all. I kept asking myself how I could have been so blind, so naive. I thought I was protecting my family, providing for us, and in the end, she was secretly plotting against me. The sense of betrayal was overwhelming, and I knew I had to figure out my next move fast. I couldn't keep living in this chaos, but I also didn't know how to start rebuilding from this mess. The next few days were a blur of anger, confusion, and planning. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat, and couldn't focus on anything except how to get control back of what was mine: our house, our savings, our life. I hired a new lawyer, one I found through a friend who specialized in family law and financial disputes. I needed to understand my legal options. The lawyer, Lisa, was sharp, no nonsense, and immediately started digging into the paperwork. She told me that the deed she signed secretly was a serious legal matter, especially since she did it without my knowledge while I was abroad. But the problem was, she claimed she had the right to do it, because I was supposedly neglectful, absent, and she felt insecure about our marriage. That was a lie. She always knew I was working hard, traveling, trying to give us a good life. But she used her supposed insecurities as a shield to justify her betrayal. Lisa explained that I could challenge the deed, contest its validity, and potentially have it declared invalid since she signed it secretly and under false pretenses. But that process would take time, months, maybe longer. Meanwhile, she was trying to assert that she owned the house outright, claiming it was her property now, legally hers. I knew I had to act fast. The house was our biggest asset, and if she managed to get her way, I'd be out on the street. I also found out that she had been draining our joint account, transferring money to her personal account and hiding evidence. I hired a private investigator just to see if I could find out more about her dealings, her meetings with Mark, and who else might be involved. The PI confirmed what I feared. She was meeting Mark regularly, sometimes staying overnight at hotels, sometimes at her office. She was actively hiding her tracks, even from me, which only made me angrier. I started to gather evidence, screenshots of bank transfers, the deed of trust, her secret messages, everything I could find. I also contacted some of her friends who told me she'd been acting strange, distant, and even bitchy. They said she was always on her phone, texting late at night, and that she'd been unusually defensive whenever I brought up her behavior. It all pointed to the same thing. She was hiding something big, and I was determined to expose it. One day, I confronted her again. I told her I knew everything, that I had proof of her affair, her theft, and her secret signing of the deed. Her face went pale and she started crying, claiming she didn't mean to hurt me, that she was just lost, that she loved me but was weak. She begged me to forgive her, said she was sorry, and insisted it was all a mistake. But I wasn't buying her tears anymore. I told her I wanted her to leave the house, to give me some space to think, and to start facing the consequences of what she did. She screamed, called me a controlling bastard, and told me I was overreacting, that she was the victim here. That was the breaking point. I realized I couldn't keep living in a house where she was actively trying to take everything from me, where she was lying to my face and tearing my life apart. I knew I had to do something drastic. I decided to file for divorce immediately, to protect what's left of my sanity and assets. I also contacted the bank and the lawyer to start the legal process of contesting the deed, and I hired a forensic accountant to track every suspicious transfer and expense she made. The feeling of betrayal was still raw, but I was determined to fight for what was rightfully mine. Throughout all this, I kept asking myself how she could be so selfish, so manipulative. She acted like she was the victim, crying and lying her way through it all. But I saw her for what she really was, a woman willing to destroy everything I built for her own selfish reasons. I was angry at her, yes, but more than anything, I was hurt. How do you rebuild trust after something like this? How do you even look at her the same way again? I didn't have the answers yet, but I knew one thing. I wasn't going down without a fight. I was going to take back what was mine, and I was going to make sure she paid for her lies and betrayal. Do you want me to go on? The legal battle was a nightmare from the start. My lawyer, Lisa, warned me that contesting the deed of trust wouldn't be easy, especially since she had signed it secretly, and there was no clear record of her being coerced or misled. Still, we had enough proof. Her secret messages, the bank transfers, the fact that she signed the deed without my knowledge while I was away. That alone was enough to start a serious challenge, but she wasn't making it easy. Her lawyer, a slick guy named Todd, kept dragging his feet, refusing to release the documents I needed, claiming they were under some confidentiality clause. Meanwhile, she kept insisting she owned the house outright and that I had no right to contest her words, not mine. She'd call me constantly, crying, yelling, telling me I was ruining everything, that I was impossible to live with, that I was controlling. She'd say I was just jealous of her success, jealous of Mark, and that I was making everything worse. Honestly, I was sick of her crying and lying. Every time she opened her mouth, it was a new excuse, a new story. She told me she'd signed the deed because she was afraid I'd leave her, that she thought it was the only way to keep the house. But I knew better. She was trying to protect herself from getting caught, from losing everything she'd stolen. I kept gathering evidence, hearing private investigators to follow her, and even tapping her phone with legal permission. I wanted to catch her in the act, catch her lying again. And sure enough, I found more messages, plans to run away with Mark, discussions about how to hide the money, even instructions to burn the deed once she got her hands on the house. She was planning her escape even as she was crying about how much she loved me. That made me angrier. How could she be so cold, so calculating? I reached the point where I had enough evidence to file a motion to throw out the deed of trust. I wanted the court to declare it invalid because she signed it without my knowledge and under false pretenses. But the legal process was slow. The judge scheduled a hearing, and I had to prepare a mountain of paperwork. The night before the hearing, I sat alone in my apartment, staring at the pile of documents and feeling the weight of everything crashing down on me. I was exhausted, angry, and just worn out. I'd lost trust in her, lost the sense of normalcy I once had. I wondered if I'd ever feel like myself again. The day of the hearing was tense. My lawyer presented all the evidence, argued that the deed was signed under duress and without proper disclosure, and that it should be declared invalid. Her lawyer tried to argue that she was within her rights, that she had made a voluntary decision, but the judge seemed convinced by the evidence that she had lied and manipulated her way into signing it. After hours of arguments, the judge finally ruled that the deed was invalid due to misrepresentation and lack of proper consent. I felt a huge weight lift off my shoulders. It wasn't over yet, but I had won that battle. But even with that victory, I knew my fight wasn't finished. She still claimed ownership of the house, and I had to figure out how to get her out. I filed for divorce, and the process was already. I also started looking into financial penalties. She'd stolen a lot of money, and I wanted her to pay restitution. I hired forensic accountants to trace every dollar she transferred or spent, and I demanded she return the stolen funds. The betrayal cut so deep I wondered if I'd ever fully recover. How do you forgive someone who lied, cheated, and stole everything you worked for? That question haunted me every day. The worst part was realizing how much I'd trusted her, how I'd believed in our future and the vows we made. All of that was shattered now. I was still trying to pick up the pieces. But I knew one thing. I wasn't going to let her get away with it. I'd fight with everything I had, for my house, my money, and my dignity. I had to rebuild somehow from this chaos. I wasn't sure what the future held, but I knew I couldn't stay with someone who'd betrayed me so completely. It was the hardest thing I'd ever done, but I was determined to come out of this stronger, even if it meant starting over alone. The months that followed were a whirlwind of court dates, financial disputes, and emotional exhaustion. I threw myself into the legal fight, pushing hard to get her out of the house, to recover the stolen money, and to hold her accountable for everything she'd done. My lawyer managed to secure a court order requiring her to vacate the property within 30 days. That was a small victory, but it came with its own set of complications. She refused to leave willingly, of course. She started playing the victim, claiming I was trying to ruin her, that I was a controlling asshole who just wanted to punish her for having an affair with Mark. She spun stories about how she was entitled to the house because she signed some papers, that I was just a jealous husband trying to control her. She even went so far as to say I was abusive, something I knew was a lie but still hurt to hear. Her friends and family started taking her side, and she used their influence to paint herself as the wronged wife. Meanwhile, I was dealing with the aftermath of losing not just my marriage, but also our entire financial security. The forensic accountants confirmed that she had stolen over $200, $0, which she spent on Mark, expensive trips, and her own lifestyle. Getting that money back was another battle entirely. I filed a civil suit demanding restitution, and the court ordered her to pay back every cent she took. But collecting that was another story. She had no real assets besides the house, which she refused to relinquish. I knew I'd have to go after her personal belongings, her bank accounts, maybe even her future income. Every day, I felt like I was fighting for my life, for what was left of the trust I once had in her, and for my future. There were moments I wondered if I'd ever feel normal again, if I could ever forgive her, or if I even wanted to. Throughout this chaos, I kept reflecting on everything. How I'd been blind to her lies, how I'd trusted her even when my gut told me something was wrong. I kept asking myself if I could have done anything differently, if I should have seen the signs earlier. But deep down, I knew the answer was no. Sometimes people hide their true selves so well that you don't see the cracks until it's too late, and I'd paid the price for that. Still, I refused to let her destroy everything I'd worked for. I was determined to come out of this with some semblance of justice, even if it meant starting over from scratch. One day, after a long court hearing, the judge finally ordered her to vacate the house. She was furious, screaming that I was ruining her life, that she deserved the house because she'd signed some papers. But the judge was clear. The deed was invalid and she had no legal claim to the property. She stormed out, vowing she'd fight me every step of the way. That was the moment I realized I had to prepare for a long fight, one that might never truly end. But I also knew I was done trusting her, done believing her lies. I'd been betrayed in the worst way, and I was done being a victim. Now I was left to pick up the pieces. I found a new place to live, started the process of rebuilding my finances, and focused on healing. The pain of betrayal still lingers, but I'm learning to accept what happened and move forward. I've realized that sometimes the best revenge is simply walking away, reclaiming your life, and making sure the person who betrayed you doesn't win. I don't know what the future holds, but I know I'll be okay. I have to be. And if there's one thing I've learned from all this, it's that trust is fragile, and when it's broken, you have to fight like hell to fix what's left, and sometimes that means walking away entirely. Do you want me to go on? Looking back now, I realize how much I underestimated her. I thought we had a good life, a strong marriage. Turns out, all those years of trust were just illusions. The betrayal cut deeper than I ever expected, not just because of the affair or the stolen money, but because she lied about everything, about her feelings, her intentions, even the house we built our lives in. The woman I thought I knew turned out to be someone I barely recognized, a master manipulator who used my absence and trust against me. The hardest part was facing the fact that someone you love can betray you so completely. It's like your entire world crumbles overnight. I went from feeling secure and happy to feeling hollow and betrayed. But in the end, I learned something valuable. Trust is a fragile thing, and when it's broken, you have to rebuild your life with caution. I realized that sometimes the best revenge is walking away, reclaiming your dignity, and refusing to be a victim of someone else's lies. I managed to get through the court battles, the financial chaos, and the emotional wreckage. I found strength I didn't know I had. I moved out, started fresh, and slowly began to heal. It's not easy, and the scars will probably stay with me forever, but I've come to accept that some betrayals are so profound that you can't fix what's broken. You just have to learn to live with it and grow stronger. Now, I focus on rebuilding my life, my finances, and my peace of mind. I don't dwell on what could have been. Instead, I look forward. I know I'll never forget what she did, but I also know I won't let it define me. I've learned that sometimes you have to lose everything to find yourself again. And I've learned that true strength lies in walking away from what no longer serves you, even if it hurts like hell. So that's my story. It's a cautionary tale, I guess. Be careful who you trust, because betrayal can come from the people you least expect. And when it does, the only thing you can do is fight for yourself, stand up, and refuse to be a victim. Because at the end of the day, your life is yours, and no one has the right to take it from you, no matter how much they lie or betray you.